Guys, hi, good morning, everyone. We shall start the session in next 5 minutes. We're just waiting for some participants more to join. So in next 5 minutes, we shall start the session. Thank you.
So we'll start with the session now. Good morning to one and all present. Myself, Pansri Gosalia, thanking you on behalf of National Stock Exchange for joining us today for the webinar. This webinar This webinar would be an interactive session where we would be talking about the common observations with respect to preferential issue and also how to file the preferential application. Before starting with the webinar, I would like to introduce you with our team who's been handling these sessions, who's been handling the applications pertaining to further issues. Myself, Bansri Kosalia, Ms. Charmi Dharod, Utkarsh Mishra, Ankita Sharma, and Shrishti Agarwal. They look into the applications pertaining to further issues, which is like QIP, rights, preferential, FCCBs, etc. Further, please note, the team would be available on the calls to assist you with the applications, and the contact details of the concerned team members are available in the NEEPS portal under the tab Contact Us under the tab Help. Coming back to today's session, Ms. Ankita Sharma will give a brief on common observations and points which needs to be taken care of with respect to preferential issue, followed by Ms. Shrishti Agarwal and Utkarsh Mishra, who will be giving a walkthrough on filing the preferential application on post allotment and in principle approval. Your active participation is important throughout the session, and therefore we have enabled Ask Question feature. If you have any questions pertaining to the presentation, please type your questions in the designated box and send across. We will be addressing the questions at the end of the session. Without taking any more time, let us begin with the presentation. I would now hand over the session to Ms. Ankita Sharma.
Good morning, everyone. So this session is about discussing about various stages in the preferential allotment. There are basically three stages. You can see over here. First one is in approval. The second goes for the post allotment, which is also known as listing approvals, and the last is trading approval. Here in principal approval, one of the major and important that the application has to be filed on the same day on which the dispatch of the notice has been done. Where in case of post allotment of securities, whereas in trading approval it has to be filed within 7 working days from the date of grant of listing approval by the stock exchange. Here, if the timeline are breached, then you can see over here in principal approval, the company has to take the SEBI exemption, which has for the non-compliance which has been made, as mentioned in regulation. By the exchange for the deficiency. Also, one of the important points is that in case of free holding, if any of the lottery holds preferential holding, then transaction statement from the depository participant has to be submitted by the company. One of the important major points, which is very crucial, is that there should be no sale during 9 trading days till the date. So, sale transactions are particularly not allowed. If there is a valuation, if there is other than cash transaction, then has to be submitted to the company from the independent registered valuer. Pricing certificate has to be submitted by the company. It should be of the PCA, PCS, or the statutory auditor, any of the above. Where there are two cases, the shares can be frequently traded or infrequently traded. In case of frequently traded, the pricing calculation will be as per regulation 164, which will be 90 trading days or 10 In principle approval, in principle with all the LODR regulations, disclosure about the UBO, pre and post issue capital that may be held by the allotment. In the notice, the corrigendum will be issued higher. Whereas in case of fully traded shares, also there are certain requirements where the valuation should be taken from the independent register valuer. First will be the where the in the articles of the company there is a provision where it has been written that the requirement of the valuation report is there. Second is in case of infrequently traded shares, as I have already explained. And lastly is when there is change in control or where the allotment is more than 5% of post-issued capital in a financial year. So you can see over here, basically, this is the illustration of the calculation of 90 and 10 trading days. You can have a look in detail. It is already there in the checklist of the company, which you will get on the NEET's portal itself. Post-allotment, which is the second stage, which is also known as the listing approvals. So, as I explained earlier, the application has to be made within 20 days from the date of allotment of security. Allotment should be made within 15 days from shareholder approval or regulatory approval, whichever is later. There should be no sale by the allottee till the allotment of securities. The consideration should be made by the from the respective allottee's bank account, and this is one of the requirements in the statutory auditor certificate itself. There should be sufficient lock-in period of pre-preferential holding, where if the securities are equity shares, then the lock-in will be 90 trading days from the trading approval. Whereas if the securities are convertible security, then it will be 90 trading days from the date of allotment of that particular convertible security. If there is any shortfall, then there is provision for the extension. So company has to extend the same. Post-allotment listing approval. The allotment of equity shares pursuant to the exercise of convertible security should be completed within 15 days from the date of such exercise by the allottee. One of the checklist points is the certificate of PCS. It should state that the issue is in compliance with all the regulations of ICTR. Where the relevant date of the company is on or after 14 January 2022, then the lock-in provisions are stated. The company has to abide by the provisions of the lock-in as given. In case of promoter and promoter group, it will be 18 months from the date of trading approval. Whereas in case of non-promoter, lock-in shall be in for 6 months from the date of trading approval. One of the major concerns of the companies are that payment kahan karni hai. So there is a virtual account of NSE, and it is already there. It is already mentioned in the listing invoice, annual listing invoices of the company. So company has to refer that. Now this ICD document, issue summary document, is something which is new thing, and as per the SEBI circuit.
Just 1 second. I think some people are not able to see the correct slide. We'll just reshare it. 1 second. We are actually restarting from the pricing slide because we want there should not be any confusion in this, because we have seen a lot of cases where the entire illustration with respect to pricing calculation is not appropriately done by companies many times. So just for clarity, because some of the ends, the slide was not getting changed, we will just restart from the pricing one. So Ankita, if you can please start from, you can go slide forward. Yes, please restart from.
Pricing certificate. So pricing, in case of frequently traded shares, there is regulation 164 has to be referred by the company. The pricing has to be 90 trading days or 10 trading days of volume weighted average price, whichever is higher. So the issue price should be higher of 90 trading days and 10 trading days. Whereas the independent registered valuer certificate has to be submitted by the company in case of infrequently traded shares. Also, there are certain the aspects in which the independent registered valuer certificate has to be submitted. Those are if the AOA of the company has it that the company is required that certificate where there is change in control or allotment more than 5% of post-issue fully diluted share capital in a year, financial year, and where the shares are infrequently traded. In all of these cases, the certificate from the independent register valuer is required and mandatory. So you can see over here illustrations for 90 and 10 trading days. Basically, the checklist, it is already there on the NEEPS portal. Now, the second stage is post-allotment, which is also known as the listing approvals. So, the application has to be made within 20 days from the date of allotment of securities. Allotment should be made within 15 days from shareholder or regulatory approval, whichever is later. If the shareholder approval is on certain date and after that the regulatory approval the company has got, then the 15 days shall start from the date of regulatory approvals. One of the major requirements is also that there should be no sale by the allottee till the allotment of security. The consideration should be from the respective bank account of the allottees. This point is also stated in the statutory auditor certificate. Sufficient lock-in in case of pre-preferential holding, in case of equity share, and in case of convertible securities, it is 90 trading days. In case of equity share, it is 90 trading days from the trading approval. Whereas in case of convertible security, it is 90 trading days from the date of allotment of convertible security. If there is any shortfall, then the exchange will ask for the extension of the same. Allotment of equity shares pursuant to exercise of convertible security should be completed within 15 days from the date of exercise by security. Also, the requirement is of PCS certificate, in which the company will state that the company is complying with all the ICDR regulations. Where the company has a relevant date of on and after 14 January 2022, then the lock-in provisions will be applicable are, you can see on the slides. In case of promoter or promoter group, 18 months from the date of trading approval. Whereas if the allottee is non-promoter, the lock-in will be 6 months from the trading approval. Often companies are confused that where they have to pay where they have to make the payment for the application. So the payment should be made in the virtual account of NSE. All the account details are already mentioned in the annual listing invoices of the company, so they can refer that. Issue summary document. So as per the new requirement and new SEBI circular, all the companies which are filing filing preferential issue, QIP, right issue, ADR, GDR application, FCCB, be it pre or post, the companies are required to submit the ICD document. Submission as per the ICD document is mandatory. Otherwise, in case of 28(1), also, and in case of post allotment also, listing applications, without that ICD document, the exchange won't go further with the application. Also, there is one of the guidance note on inclusion of object of issue. This is also SEBI circular dated 13 December 2023. So, if the preferential issue size is of 1,000 crore or more, then 100 crore or more, then the company has to look at certain point. Each object of the issue should be clearly stated and it should not be open-ended or vague. We have seen certain application where the object is not clearly stated and it is vague. It is more of open-ended. So Please, the company should take care of that. The amount of fund proposed to be utilized against each of the objects should be clearly stated. Total amount of issue size allotted for different object of the issue shall together be used only for that particular object and not for the other object. And it cannot be added to general corporate purposes. The tentative timeline for utilization of proceeds for each of the objects should be clearly stated. It should not be vague. The fund to be used for general corporate purpose, if any, should not exceed 25% of the fund to be raised for the preferential issue. Now I will hand over to my colleague, Shrishti Agarwal. She will give you the walkthrough of how the application is should be submitted. Shrishti.
Good morning, everyone. Now we will have a walkthrough towards filing of the preferential in principle approval application. Firstly, the company has to log in on the NEEPS portal using their login ID and password. Then, the company has to go on issue under that preferential and under that pre-allotment. Here, we are using a test environment and this is a dummy application that we are going to file. Firstly, the application details will come ABC Limited, for example, the company name. This would be the symbol of the company. This would be company name. And then the company has to select the preferential application. Company can select any of the option which is applicable to the company. Then the company has to select the shareholders approval type, which can be AGM, EGM or postal ballot. Whatever is the shareholder approval type, the company has to select the same. Here the company has to fill the shareholder meeting date. This is the currency, that is INR. Thereafter, company has to select the board approval date, that has to be the board meeting date in which the preferential issue is finalized. Then company has to fill the notice date, which is the notice dispatch date, the date on which the notice has been dispatched to the shareholders of the company. This is the face value of the instrument. Here the company has to fill the issue size. Issue size will be number of securities companies proposing to allot into the issue price of the security. After filling all the details, the company has to click on next. Here comes the security detail tab. The company has to firstly select the security type, which can be debentures, equity, preferences, whatever the securities company is allotting, you have to fill the same. After clicking on security type, security name and face value of the instrument will get automatically pre-filled. Here the company has to fill the issue price of the security. Now the company has to fill the number of securities, that how many securities company is proposing to issue. Here will come the amount. Amount will be issue price into number of securities. Then the company has to select the method of relevant date calculation, which can be any of the above, whichever is used by the company and applicable to the company. After selecting the method of relevant date calculation, relevant date will automatically get pre-filled. Here comes the minimum applicable price. Whatever is the price, issue price that is fixed by the company as per the applicable ICBI regulations, that the company has to fill over here. Then there will be a number of equity shares after conversion. That what will be the number of equity shares, or if the company is allotting warrants, then what will be the equity shares that will be allotted after conversion of the warrants. After filling in all the details, company has to click on add security details. Once you click on add security details, the details will be available in a landscape mode. Here we have pre-filled two details, warrants and equity. If the company is allotting warrants as well as equity, the company has to fill in the details of each of them and then add separately for each of the details. Firstly, fill the details of the warrant, add them. That will appear here in the landscape mode. Then you have to save the details. After saving the details, then company has to again fill the details of the equity, then again add security details. Again, it will be available on the landscape mode, and then save. Saving the details is very important. After saving all the details, then you have to go to the next tab, that is the allottee holding details. Under the allottee holding details, the company has to firstly fill the allottee name. Then the company has to fill the shareholding type. Shareholding type can be any of the one which is seen in the options. It may take few seconds to load the options. As this is a test environment, so it is taking certain time. It will not be, this time will not be taken when the company is actually filling the application. So the options has come. You can select the relevant option. For example, an individual is a shareholder holding nominal share capital up to rupees 1 lakh. Then you have to select this option. If the allottee is a company, then you have to select body corporate, and if the option is not available, then you have to select any other. Likewise, the company has to fill the details. Here the company has to fill the PAN number of the allottee. Then the company has to fill the security type. Here also the details which you have filled under the security details tab, it will be fetched from there. So you can select equity or warrants, whatever that is being allotted to this particular allottee. After that, the company has to fill the pre-preferential holding details. If the allottee is holding any pre-pref holding, then the company has to fill in the number of securities that the particular allottee is holding. And if there is no pre-pref holding, then the company has to select 0. Number of securities is the securities that are being allotted to this particular allottee. Post-preferential holding will be pre-preferential holding plus the number of securities. Post-holding percentage will be the post after the preferential issue, how much percentage of shareholding this particular allottee is going to hold in the company. Number of equity shares after conversion, that is the number of equity shares that are being allotted to this allottee, or after, if it is warrants, then how many equity shares will be allotted to this allottee post conversion of the warrants. Amount will be number of securities into issue price. And then, like we did for the security details tab, you have to click on add allottee holding, and then the details will be available in a landscape mode. You have to select the detail and save it. If there are more than one allottee, you have to do the same for all the allottees. And also, if the company wants, company can upload the details. You can select this allottee holding upload format, and Excel sheet will be uploaded. We can see the Excel sheet. Like this, an Excel sheet will be uploaded. You have to fill in all the details, and specifically under the shareholding type, those shareholding types should be mentioned, which is available under the options which we have seen before. And similarly, you can fill in all the details if there are more number of allottees. After filling in the details, here their option comes in import CSV. From here, the company can import all the details of the allottees. Company has to save the details here and then only proceed further. Also, one more important point, that the total of the securities allotted under the security details tab and the total of the securities allotted under the security holding details tab should match. Otherwise, at the end, the company will get a validation error. After filling in all the details, the company has to click on next. For the security holding details and the allotee holding details, both details has to be saved and then only click on next. After clicking on next, the next tab is for pre-preferential holding. Here, the company can add the details if the allotee is holding pre-pref holding. You have to click on add and then fill in the details of the name of the allotee, pre-holding, the number of shares that they are holding, lock-in. If that is applicable, you select yes. If that is not applicable, you select not applicable. And if it is pledged, then you have to select pledge. You have to also fill in the lock-in start date and the lock-in end date. Here, if the shares are pre-preferential holding are pledged, then you have to fill in the details that pre-preferential holding are pledged with this particular institution. After clicking on all the details, then you have to click on next. Here comes the tab for checklist. Here the company has to attach all the documents as per the checklist. For example, if the first checklist document is certified copy of the resolution passed by Board of Directors approving the preferential issue, company has to attach the file under the attachment, and then the company has to select the status as yes, no, or not applicable. If a particular checklist point is not applicable to the company, then the company can select not applicable. Otherwise, all the attachments have to be attached and the company status should be yes. After attaching all the documents, company has to click on the next. After clicking on the next, there is a tab of fees details. The fees details will automatically test according to the issue size. At this point of time, company has to first save the draft. After save draft, then you can proceed further. After saving the draft, then the system gives two options: download preferential issue, XBRL utility, upload XBRL file. Here, the company can download the preferential issue XBRL utility from here. The Excel file will be downloaded. We can see that. This is the XBRL utility that is downloaded. Company has to fill in all the details and then validate the sheet and convert the file into XML. After doing that, company can upload the XBRL file over here. Now, under the fees details tab, the company doesn't have to make the payment of the fees. Here you have to fill in the details of the fees that is already been paid. After when you come on this page, then the fees details tab, you have to fill in the details. You have to select NEFT RTGS and not online payment. Firstly, I'm saving the draft. Since it is a dummy application, I've already filled the details. So here, the company has to select the RTGS NEFT and then fill in all the details like the bank name, non bank, the bank location, etc. Then a pop-up will come that you're about to make a payment of this much amount. The company is not going to make the payment here. The company has already made the payment under the virtual account. This is only for filling in the details of the payment made by the company. After that, in the landscape mode, the details filled by the company will be seen like this. After that, you can click on next. You have to upload the XBRL utility and filling in all the details, the company can save the draft. When the company saves on draft, it will come that the application has been successfully submitted. Company can see the application number from the system details. This is how the preferential in principle approval application can be filed by the company. Now my colleague, Mr. Utkarsh Mishra, will take the session forward and tell regarding the filing of the preferential post application.
A very good morning to all the participants. Now I'll be guiding you through the post allotment application. So for filing the post allotment application, the company has to first click on issue. Then they have to go under pre to post under preferential. Once we click on pre to post, we'll see the in principle application that is already filed on the portal. So this was with respect to how we file the in principle, the post allotment application. I have already filed an application in the draft mode, which I'll be displaying for filing for displaying the filing purposes. So this is the application that I've created in the draft mode. So once we click on pre-post and we enter into the post allotment application, this is the detail that we get. The first tab is the application detail. The company has to enter the symbol, the company name, and kindly note this is a testing environment and it is a bit slow for us. For you, it will not be the case. So the company has to these details like symbol, company name, preferential application type, shareholders meeting type, currency, board approval date, notice date, shareholders meeting date. This will already be fetched from the in principle application. The company would have to enter the number of equity shares for listing and allotment made to the government. For equity shares for listing, the case is simple. The entire number of equity shares would come in this particular field. But for warrants, as you may be aware that most of the companies allot warrants in tranches. So the number of equity shares that the company is allotting pursuant to conversion of warrants, that particular number will come in particular field. Moving on to the next tab, which is approval details. This we do not have to do anything in this particular tab. Moving on to the DNR details tab. In this particular tab, the company has to enter the DNR from range and DNR to range based on the number of securities that they are allotting. To add DNR details, the company has to click on add and has to enter range from value and range to value. If the particular this particular number of shares allotted would be under lock-in based on whether the allotment is made to promoter or non-promoter as per regulation 167. So accordingly, those dates for lock-in also has to be updated in these particular fields as displayed on the screen. Moving on to the next tab, which is the security details. Here, the company has two options, either to manually enter these fields or to fetch these details from the pre-allotment applications. So in order to fetch the details, the company can click on here as displayed on the screen. And once you click on this particular tab, we have to select equity because that's the case in our current application. So the details would be manually the details be fetched from the in principle application. The company has to enter these fields like number of securities allotted. Since it is not a convertible security, so allotment date for convertible security would not be updated here. Already exercised would not be updated here. Security exercise allotted would not be updated. Forfeited and cancelled, we will update 0. Allotment date of equity shares, this we have to update because it is equity shares. So once we have all filled these inputs, we have to click on add security details. Once we click on add security details, a horizontal entry of this type would be created. Once this entry is created, there is an option to save this particular entry. Once we click on save, this particular security details would be saved in the application. So moving on to the next tab, which is the lottee holding. Here too, like security details, we have an option to either pre-fetch the values from pre-allotment application or manually enter it. So, one word of caution here, that the company has to make sure that the number that they are trying to fetch from the in-principle application should be the same which they are proposing in the current application. So those numbers should not mismatch, or else there will be a validation error. So once we fill in the allottee holding details here, we have to select the shareholding type. The shareholding type would be from the values as would be soon displayed on the screen. So from case to case basis and the type of allottee, we will have to select from these values. So once we have selected the value, it will appear in this fashion here. Then we have to enter the PAN details for the particular allottee, the security type, this again can be fetched. So we have to click here to fetch equity security details. Then the pre-preferential holding of the allottee has to be entered. The pre-holding percentage has to be entered. The number of securities allotted for the particular allottee has to be entered in this field. The post-preferential holding, which will be the total of pre-holding plus number of securities allotted, would be entered in the field as displayed on your screen. The post-holding percentage would be mentioned here. Balance number of securities, amount will be the number of securities into issue price, that would be entered here. And equity shares for current application, which is nothing but the number of shares allotted. So that particular values have to be entered here. We have to click on add allottee details. Once we click on add allottee details, a horizontal entry of this type would come would be displayed on the screen. And once this entry is this way, there's an option to save this particular entry. Once we click on the save button, it's always advisable to in between click on save draft. My screen, I think, is not visible to you. I'm just resharing the screen again. I hope my screen is visible now. Yes. So after adding the allottee holding details, like I've already described here, we have to click on add allottee holding details. Once we click on add allottee holding details, a horizontal entry would come here in this fashion. And once this entry has been generated here, we have to click on save button to add this particular entry. If there are multiple allottees, then we have to go back again in this particular form and fill in the details, and then again click on allottee holding details to add allottee holding. There's an option to also upload the allottee details through an Excel, which we can get it from, if you click on this particular button. We can import this CSV, fill in the required details, and we also have an option to upload the field in CSV here. So we'll click on export and we will export the field in CSV file here. Once we do that, we'll be able to upload the allottee holding details through bulk process. The next tab that we have to go on is the pre-preferential holding. So the allottee has pre-preferential holding. We have, in order to add the pre-preferential holding, we have to click on add button. Once we click on the add button, we have to select the allottee name. We can do it by clicking on this search button. So in our case, the allottee was and pre-holding will mention here. If the pre-holding would be under locking, so based on the case, we have to select yes, or if it isn't pledged, we have to select pledged. We have to also mention the start date and end date for login and remarks as the company may decide. Now comes the SHP option. So in this particular tab, we have to enter the pre-SHP and post-SHP. The pre-SHP and post-SHP values have to be entered here, like the total number of shares, promoter holding, lock-in shares, public holding, and lock-in shares for public. All these details have to be entered here, and if the change in capital is more than 2%, normally an error comes that the company needs to file an SHP. In that particular case, the company has to file an SHP under Regulation 31(1)(c). And in case the company faces any error while filing the SHP, the company can get in touch with the NSE SHP team for any further queries. So once we update the values in the SHP details and the pre-preferential holding, we move on to the next tab, which is the checklist. Under the checklist tab, we'll see the checklist items and we'll upload the required items here. If a particular document mentioned in the checklist is not applicable, the company is free to choose not applicable option in that particular case. After uploading the required documents in the checklist tab, the company also has an option to attach any additional document in the additional attachment tab if the company wishes to do so. After all these checklist items and other requirements are filled, the company can save draft, and post doing that, moving on to the next tab, which is the fees payment. If there is the post application only has an option of fees payment when there is an additional listing fees. So if the capital of the company is changing based on type limits, and additional listing fees would be calculated here, and that particular amount needs to be paid by the company. So after calculating the fees, additional fees amount, the company has to click on the company has to save draft first. After we have saved the draft, we'll have an option for bill payment. So this particular screen will appear, and this would also appear while filing the in principle application. The company has to click on OK to continue. The payment, as already described by Srishti, has to be paid in the virtual account. This is just a dummy portal. I think my screen is not visible. I'll reshare it again. I hope my screen is visible. So once we click on the bill payment button, a pop-up like this will come. You will be redirected to payment module. Click OK to continue. But as we are aware that the payment has to be made in the virtual account of NSE, so this is just the portal to enter the bank details. Once we click on OK, a tab of this sort would open. We have to select RTGS. It may be noted that only RTGS and NIFT should be selected in this particular case. The total amount will be calculated by its own. In this particular case, since there is no additional fees, so this amount is not coming up. The RTGS or NEFT IFSC code would be entered here as per the payment made by your bank. The bank name has to be selected from the list of values, which would appear in this fashion, and we'll select a bank. For example, the branch location has to be entered here. Once we do that and click on the save button, an entry would come here for payment details and total amount paid. Once that entry has generated here, we can click on there is just one more thing to add, that there is an option to, as you are already aware that there is a recent circular which is passed by SEBI and NSE with relating to issue summary documents. So we have to download the preferential issue XBRL utility from this button. We have to fill in the details in the XBRL utility, validate that sheet and convert it into XML format, and that XML sheet has to be uploaded in the upload XBRL file. So once that is done and this bill payment has been entry has appeared, we can click on submit button to submit the application. And just a small note to add for this preferential issue summary document has to be uploaded only either with BSC or either with NSE. It has to be done on either of the exchange as per the circular. So that has to be kept in mind by filing application. So after doing all this, once we click on the submit button, we'll be able to file the application. So that was my presentation with respect to filing of post allotment application. Thank you.
So,
So the first question that we have got is, it says that if a listed company issues an allot warrant, then does the same needs to be mandatorily be issued in demat form? In this case, yes, any kind of security that is being issued on a preferential basis shall be issued in a demat form. This is as required by the regulations itself, that is the chapter 5 of ICDR. Coming to the next question, it states that if the company is issuing warrants, still they are supposed to follow the post allotment approvals if the company does not decide to list those warrants. So here, in case the company is issuing a warrants and has obtained an in-principle approval for issuing this warrants, at the time of allotment of the warrants, the company may not, need not, ideally speaking, follow the post-allotment approvals if the warrants are not getting listed. The post-allotment approvals will be obtained from the exchange at the time of conversion of this warrants into equity. That is the time when the equity shares are allotted post the conversions. But and that is complying with all, after complying with all the requirements of SEBI ICDR regulations, that is chapter 5. But in case the company is listing those warrants, definitely the company will have to take a relevant approval from the exchange. Coming to the next point, next question, it says that in case swap of shares, is the ratio mandatorily to be mentioned in the post ballot notice? Here, yes, the complete proper details for this swap of shares will be required in the postal ballot notice. Otherwise, the object of the issue that is required as per the regulations to be mentioned in the notice will become an incomplete disclosure in that case. So when the company is giving any kind of disclosures in the notice as required by this chapter 5 of ICDR, proper, complete and accurate informations need to be given in the disclosures. In case if the disclosures are having any missing information or incorrect information, the company will have to issue a corrigendum, and this will prolong the approval process, and in some cases also some may trigger some other actions. So in that case, the companies need to ensure adequate disclosures in the notice. The next question is, if the trading is on Monday, is it frequently traded? So here we understand if the person needs to question that if the company is trading only on Mondays, that is put up on weekly trading or so, whether the company can be considered as a frequently traded. In this regards, the company needs to refer the regulations which talk about how is the company being classified as a frequently traded company, which gives a certain criteria of 240 days, and the volumes need to be compared with the 10% thing. So this regulations need to be considered for the determining whether the company is a frequently traded company or an infrequently traded company. Coming to the next case, with next question, which talks about, can a company file in principle application with the exchange if SOP fines are imposed on the company, and for that the company has filed a waiver application. Here the company can file an in principle application, but for with respect to considering the application towards approval will depend from case to case depending on the facts of the case. Because here the regulation states that the company needs to be in compliance with the continuous listing agreement, the clauses of continuous listing agreement. So the company ideally will have to first ensure compliance with the non-compliance that was occurred, due to which the SOP fines are levied on the company, and also the company may pay the fines that are levied by the company under protest, and then whatever the waiver decision can come in, can go ahead with that. But however, for considering the application, this minimum things needs to be there by the company, and then depending upon the internal checks and the other facts of the case may be considered further. The next question is stating that if a shareholder holding pre-preferential holding in a company and the convertible securities are allotted to the shareholder, and he also purchases some shares from open market. So here the question is raised that whether this shares now purchased would be considered as the pre-preferential holding of the allottee, and whether will be subject to lock-in. Here any kind of purchase that is done by the allottee before the allotment of the warrants or the equity, as the case may be, in case of issuance of warrants or any convertible security, that is the date of issuance of the warrants or the convertible securities, and in case of direct issuance of equities, the date of allotment of the equities would be considered. So any kind of purchase that is done by the allottee before this allotment would be considered as the pre-preferential holding of the allottee, and would be subject to the necessary lock-in requirements of the ICDR. Here, but the company needs to ensure that the allottee is abiding by the condition with respect to no sale. So that needs to be considered. Otherwise, the allottee becomes shall not be considered for the approvals. The next question is, it states that the post allotment we have a lock-in in securities for 90 days from the date of allotment. Is there any timelines for application to the depository for the same? Here the company needs to ensure that the lock-in is immediately done from the relevant date, and that would continue up to 90 days from the date of allotment of the securities, that is warrants or the equities, as the case may be. For the securities that are newly allotted also needs to go into lock-in immediately from the date of allotment that is applicable. For example, in case the shares are purchased on not purchased, the pre-allottee holding is there from allottee has some 100 shares and the relevant date is 10th March, say. For example, the lock-in would commence from 10th March, and in case the allottee purchases certain shares on 12th March or 14th March, the same shares will immediately go to lock-in. So because this becomes the pre-preferential holding of the allottee, that is shares purchased before the date of allotment. Because here the date of allotment will be after the shareholders' approval and the exchange approval being given. And further also, the securities that are being allotted now pursuant to allotment, maybe the securities are allotted on 10th of April or say, for example. So immediately the securities would be subject to lock-in, as this the newly allotted securities are supposed to be in lock-in for certain from the date of allotment required by the chapter provisions of the ICDR, that is 18 months or 6 months, depending on the category of the allottee, that is promoter or non-promoter. The next question says that in case of pre-allotment application on NEEP's portal, what should be written in notice date? Is it the date of signing of the notice or the date of dispatch of the notice to the shareholder? The company shall in this case mention the actual date of the notice shall be mentioned in this field. So we'll take a few more questions that have been come up. So the next question is, it says that do we have to pay the fees 2 times during pre and post allotments? Here the processing fees has to be paid by the company whilst applying for the in principle applications, in principle approval, obtaining approval from the exchange under 28(1) of the LODR. So at that time the company will have to pay the processing fees. And after that, once the allotments are done and the company applies for post allotment listing approval, at this point in time, if the slab rate of the company is changing, in that case the company will have to pay the additional listing fees. No processing fees is supposed to be paid at that stage. Processing fees shall be paid only at the time of obtaining in principle approval, and at the time of post allotment listing approval, only the additional listing fees, if any triggered, shall be paid. So the next question is, do we need to appoint the monitoring agency in case of issue size exceeds 100 crores? Yes, this is as per the new amendment that has been brought in the ICDR regulations, and accordingly, in case the issue size is more than 100 crore, definitely the company needs to appoint a monitoring agency and also ensure compliance with the exchange circular issued with respect to disclosures in the notice that is being shared to the shareholder, as guided by Ankita in her earlier slides in the presentation. So all those disclosures have to be appropriately made in the notice. And this monitoring agency shall be appointed immediately once the company decides with the issue, so that there are the monitoring agency accordingly does the monitoring for the same. So now we have covered almost the questions that have been put up in the question box. So in case someone wants to put up certain more questions, we will be happily taking some more 2-3 questions. So please put it up in the question box. By the time, we would just like to highlight certain scenarios that in which a valuation is triggered. Valuation report is to be triggered and the company needs to provide the same with the exchange and also provide the details in the notice. So here the valuation report will trigger in the 3 scenarios. That is, if the shares of the company are infrequently traded, if the company, the allotment is beyond 5%, or there is a change in control, that is as per 166A of the regulations, or if the articles of associations of the company requires the same. In that case, the company needs to submit a valuation report, and the pricing will be depending upon the valuation and the other provisions that are being given in the ICDR provisions. So here the company needs to ensure that the valuation report that is being considered will be, the valuation report will have consideration to all the 3 methods, that is the income approach, the market approach, and the asset approach. In case any of the approaches not being considered, the exchange may not consider the valuation report that is submitted by the company. So the valuation report needs to be incomplete or needs to be complete in all the sense, that is considering all the three approaches. One question that has come up is asking whether the monitoring agency can be appointed after the allotment of shares. Here, the monitoring agency cannot be appointed after the allotment of shares. It needs to be done before. Because once the allotment of shares is done, the funds to move into the company, and the monitoring agencies should be appointed before that. So I think there are no more questions, and will be concluding for the day. We thank all the participants that those that joined the session for coming and hearing us. We would be continuing such sessions in future, and we would be happy to have such a participant from all the companies here. Thank you.